In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a motion path in After Effects, and then I'm going to show you how to parent an object to that motion path. This is just one of several ways that you can do it. Okay, so first let's go into After Effects. We'll set up our project here. Here we go. Takes a few minutes to load. There we go. Okay, so when we get to this menu, we're going to click on a new project here. All right, and we're going to go up to composition, choose new composition, or Control N is your shortcut. And the assignment calls for a 1080 at 29.97 frames. You'll probably find several different instances where you could choose that. It doesn't matter which one you choose, just choose one that's 1080 at 29.97 frames. 10 seconds is our starting point. Click OK. There's our screen. And the next thing we're going to do is bring in our background. We need an image for our background. We need an image that we're going to animate. An object could be something that moves around in your environment. So let's go ahead and go to File. We'll choose Import. Let's just choose multiple files here. And again, I went to my graphics folder here where I have everything stored. It's a good idea to have your images stored where you want them. Here's my racetrack, and here's a race car that I modified here and removed the background. So I grab these two, import those in, click Done there. Let's bring down the track first. So there's my race car track, and notice there it's a pretty zoomed in. So I want to go down on my timeline here in After Effects to this track itself. Click the little arrow there to the left of the name. And then where it says transform, click the little arrow to the left. And we're going to scale this thing down. So I'm going to go over to these percentages in blue where it says scale. Left click my mouse button and drag to the left to drop it down in size. And I'm also going to move this a little bit just to reposition it. Looks like it can come down just a little bit more. Nope, not position. Control Z will undo it. Scale. Yeah. So we're going to scale that down just a little bit more. Maybe there, and then I'll slide this over, grab this handle in the screen, and widen this a little bit. So now it looks like our screen is covering, the racetrack's covering the screen, but it's not so zoomed in that you can't see all of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is make sure my scrub key on the bottom is at 0. I'm going to click the little stopwatch here next to the word scale, and that's going to remember to keep it scaled at 67.3 and 63.0%. So we're good there. Next step now is to bring my race car down here onto the timeline. So I'm going to close this track, this racetrack track, so to speak, and then I'm going to bring the race car down onto my timeline. And since it's underneath the track, I'm going to bring the race car up above it. So click and drag it up, drop it in, and there it is. I added some pinstriping and I removed the background on this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the race car. We're going to open up that layer, clicking the little arrow, and then under transform, or next to transform, clicking that arrow. And we're going to scale this down as well. So I'm just going to go over to my sliders here where it says scale, click and drag to the left. And there our car now is a better size for this track. And again, to remember it, I'm going to click the stopwatch next to the word scale. Notice there, if I move the scrub key over, you'll see the blue diamond keyframe there. All right, So before we begin anything, I'm just going to move the car. I'm going to grab it. I want to move it off of this area, and you'll understand why when I get to that. I want it to start and end about here in its movement. Okay, so I'm going to leave that here for a second. I'm not going to keyframe anything. I'm just moving it over there right now because my scrub key's at 0, so it'll stay there. And so we have our 2 layers in there. We have our background and we have our object, the car, which is going to move along the racetrack. Okay, so the next step now is to create my motion path. Now, the best and easiest way that I know to do this for this project in a beginning graphics class is to go up to, and I'm sure there are much better ways to do it, but we're going to go up to layer, and we're going to create a new layer. And on this one, we're just going to make an adjustment layer. Okay, so again, go to layer, new, and we're going to choose adjustment layer. And I'm going to put the adjustment layer, well, actually, we could probably leave it right there, actually, since it's not showing anything. So we'll leave the adjustment layer there. Down here, we've got the race car track, and here's the adjustment layer. And notice here when there's the object in the center of the screen here. That's your anchor point. That's the point at which everything in that layer rotates. For example, if I click on the car layer, for example, you'll see the anchor point is in the center of the top of the car. When I go to rotate that, you'll see it rotates along that point. That's your pivot point. That's the actual thing that we're going to animate to create our motion path. Control Z will undo it. So we're going to be animating that. So when I go into the adjustment layer, notice there that my anchor point is not where this one is. It really helps speed things up if you grab your anchor point on the layer and line it up with the cars. Onto the top of the car and just try to match them. So again, if I go to the race car, there it is. If I go to there, it's very close, right? The idea is just to get them pretty close, and you should be in good shape here. Okay, now looking at the race car, they're still a little off from each other. It's hard to get it precise there. Okay, and that's still off a little bit. About there. Dead on there. So if you can match those up early on, it makes it a little bit easier, the whole process. Okay, so now notice on this adjustment layer, when I turn the eyeball off, nothing changes, right? Except the anchor point disappears that's on top of the car. That's good. So we can leave the anchor point adjustment layer on top here for now. So now that I've selected my adjustment layer, now I'm going to start creating my motion path. So make sure your scrub key on the bottom of the timeline is set to 0. You can hit the rewind button on preview till you get to 0. And we're going to go ahead and start this process. Okay, so I'm going to open up the adjustment layer here. Transform tools are already ready to go. So what we're going to be keyframing is the position of your anchor point. So click the stopwatch where it says position there. Notice there we've got a keyframe started. And here now I'm just going to move. Here's how the process works. You move the scrub key along the timeline, then you move your object. In this case, we're just grabbing the anchor point on the adjustment layer. Okay, let's move to another second. So we got about 10 seconds. So I'm going to try to make this stretch out to about 10. Okay, there's my next move. Let's go to 3 seconds and then grab your object, in this case our anchor point on our adjustment layer. Scrub key, then grab your object. Maybe a little more. Here we go. Scrub key, then move your object. Something like that. Okay, we're about 6 seconds into it, so by then we're pretty close to, we're over halfway done with the track also. Okay, by 7 seconds, we're about, maybe about right there. 8 seconds, we're getting close to the end, right? Maybe there. Okay, 2 more seconds here. 9 seconds. We're probably about right here. And then by 10, we should be in the same position we were in the beginning, right? So I'm going to go back to this first keyframe on my position timeline, select it, the one at 0 here. See how it turned blue when I selected it? I'm going to select this keyframe, choose Control C or Edit Copy to copy that keyframe. Then we're going to go back to the very end of this position. At the very end of, make sure your scrub key's in the last frame, and we're going to click Control V or Edit Paste. And notice there that last keyframe pasted in there along the position timeline. It's back to its original position there. Okay. So when I scrub through this, watch this, when I grab the scrub key and scrub through it, notice there that the anchor point is moving along the path that you created. That's a position motion path you created. Okay, and it takes us right back to the very first frame. So now what we can do is go into each of these handles along the frame you created, and it has 2 handles for that handle, and we make adjustments, right? You can adjust your curve. You can drag it in or out to increase it. That's just dragging the mouse up or down or left or right to change the angle, okay? So don't be afraid to play with these handles here. You can drag them left or right, or drag the mouse left or right, or drag the mouse up and down or side to side to make the angle the way you want it. Okay, same thing here. We can adjust these curves. And notice how they affect the timeline here. And again, I'm just trying to smoothen it out a little bit. Here I can grab this one, bring it over if it's if it's in the wrong position, or it puts the car in the wrong position, maybe about there. Then it comes up here. That looks pretty good. And then we'll leave that. Maybe this one here comes down to about there, and we can adjust the angle. Okay, and then we can move along the timeline. Grab the scrub key, and this, if this disappears, it'll reappear as you move the scrub key along the timeline. Okay, and then again, you can adjust the angle by dragging these handles in or out. That looks pretty good. All right, so you're just making some adjustments here on the angles. Makes it a little more convincing in that way. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Maybe drag this one over just a little bit more this way and tighten that up a bit. Okay, I like that. That's a little better. So you're smoothing it out. You're making it more rounded and making the path a little more logical there. So now that we've done that, so again, you can scrub through and see that the anchor point is following that path. Okay, now if all goes well, if all successful, we've made a nice motion path. You can right click on this and click select rename here. Let's call this motion path. So this layer is the motion path. So you don't forget it in case you have many layers that you're editing. So once we have a motion path, now the easiest way to parent this object to that motion path is simply to grab this wick tool right here. This is called a parent pick whip. It's a little spirally looking object there down in the timeline where that track is, the race car track. You grab this little swirly tool, the parent pick wick, by left clicking your mouse button, holding the mouse button down, and dragging this layer to the layer that you want to parent it to. So all I did, let's do that again. All I simply did was take this parent pick wick tool, and dragged it to the motion path layer, let go, and now those are linked. Another way you can do it, instead of use the Pickwick tool, is you can go to the parent and link window right to the right of the Pickwick tool where it says none, and choose the path that you want to link it to right there. So we're going to link this to motion path. So you can just select it right there. And notice it shows up in the window there. That's the exact same thing. I'm going to undo it, Control Z. That's the exact same thing as grabbing the Pickwick tool and dragging it to the layer. So now that we've done that, we've basically linked the race car to the motion path. And now when I play it, the car should at least follow the path that we've linked it to. And notice there it is following the path. Okay, so our motion path is established here. It's connected to the car. We've parented the motion path to the car, where the car follows the motion path. And again, so the next step, though, we've got to consider is to make sure you get our rotations right. So we do that manually. So we're going to go into the race car layer, open that up, and we're going to play with the rotation frames. Remember, before you do this, make sure you click the stopwatch once. Okay, so once you click the stopwatch, you start your keyframing. Let's go ahead and begin that process. 1 second in, it'll have rotated maybe about this far. And again, I'm just doing it the same way I did the motion path keyframes. By this point, it's going to have rotated this far. And then 3 seconds in, we're going to have some rotation about right here. And notice that the anchor point isn't changing position. The anchor point stays the same. So that's why we can get away with parenting it to the other position layer. Okay, and then here we're going to rotate this. By the time it gets here, it's going to be up going this way. By the time it's here, it's going to be going the other way, of course. By the time it's right here, I'm just doing this 1 second at a time like I did with the position keyframes. Except this time I'm doing it on the race car layer itself, not the adjustment layer in which we created the position keyframes. This is coming around about right here, I'm sure, by then. Okay, by 8 seconds, we're going to have it probably about there. 9 seconds, it's going to be there. By 10 seconds, of course, we're going to take the first keyframe. So in the rotation area, right, in the rotation keyframe, we're going to click on the first one. So I'm clicking on the blue one, clicking on the first one in the beginning of our rotation keyframes. It's going to turn blue. There it is right there. Hit Control C to copy it, and then go to the end of the rotation, Control V, and notice there it's pasted at the very end as the last keyframe. So we're right in the same position we were when we started. Okay, so now that we've made some rotations along the race car layer, we've created a motion path on the adjustment layer and linked it to the race car, or linked the race car to it using the Pickwick tool. Now we should be able to play it, and it should follow pretty good rotation there. That looks pretty good. I'm going to have to make some adjustments here, obviously. But you get the idea. That's the basic way to create a motion path, to parent another layer to that motion path, and also to create manual adjustments along whichever layer you want to complement that motion.